Hi all, Chris at the Ultimate Recycler. Tomatoes. I've done a worm test on tomatoes a while back, but one of my followers actually asked if it makes a lot of difference whether you put them in complete or chopped up a bit. These ones are sliced fairly thickly, but they're still sliced. And this pile of goop here is what I put through my garden mulcher, and it created just a real puree. Actually, it's just very sludgy and slimy, but it's the same amount. So I weighed them up roughly. There's about 1 kilo in each, a little bit over, which is probably almost 2.5 pounds. So I'm going to do a comparison with these ones side by side in a little garden bed that's actually teeming with worms at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see the difference. So this particular garden bed hasn't been disturbed for quite a long time. I did a test here on coffee grounds, but a massive dose. I put 2 or 3 buckets fulls in, I forget now, but I'll put the link up now that refers you back to that video about using large amounts of coffee grounds in your garden. So let's have a look. It's probably been 6 months. It's been a long time. And there's still coffee grounds there. But look at the worms in here, they're just phenomenal. There's a little bit of mould, but this was never going to be a quick test. I didn't really worry about it. It was just a way to get rid of a lot of coffee grounds at the time. And I think I said in the earlier video that the worms will eventually get into it. Now look at those castings. So there's obviously still lots of coffee grounds in here. And the worms are having no issues getting into it. So I think it was, 3 or 4 inches thick, probably even a bit more. Anyway, there's lots of worms in here. So I might add the tomatoes on top and just see if they get involved, see which ones they eat first, if indeed they're even interested with so many coffee grounds on the go. But we'll try it and see what happens. Okay, so I've spread the tomatoes out, as you can see, in 3 equal lots. So they're going to be under the same conditions with some very caffeinated worms. The tomatoes came from the bakery over the road. They were very overripe, so the mulched ones were super juicy, and I poured all the juice in with them. Same with the sliced ones, and the complete tomatoes have basically still got most of the juice inside. So we'll check back in a few weeks and just see if the worms are getting into them or they're still spaced out on their caffeine. So it's only been a week and a half since I put this tomato comparison test down, but I'm doing a few filming jobs today. I thought I'd check in on it and see how it's going. Okay, look at that. I'll flick this carpet right over and we'll have a good look. So perhaps the worms were sick of their coffee grounds and appreciate a new diet. So they're heavily into the sliced ones. The same on the pureed or mulched tomatoes, and the large tomatoes pretty well look like they did when I put them there. So that's a really good piece of information there. There are worms there, and the tomatoes have sort of, oh yeah, look at the ones under there. So they're probably going to get into these tomatoes and ball up like they do. But I think the message to take out of this is that definitely cutting the food up increases the surface bacteria, allows more of the microbes to do their stuff, and then the worms come along and just love it. And so the pureed ones are much the same. They've formed a little bit of a sludgy layer, but there's masses of worms in amongst that. So I'll check it again in another week or two and just see which of these two disappear first. But they're on equal footing at the moment. And the larger ones, well, the worms will get into them, but they're certainly going to take longer. So we'll check back soon. Okay, the final check on these tomatoes. This comparisons test I've done on these tomatoes. It's been another couple of weeks since you last saw it. And let's see how they've gone. Alright, worms have continued to enjoy their tomatoes. I didn't grab my scratcher, I'll just go and get it. Okay, I'm back, just about a 10-minute walk around the yard to find where my little scratcher was. So these have now disappeared into the castings, but we'll have a look under here. Now this was where the tomatoes were that were mulched, and there appears to be really no evidence at all of the tomatoes other than some very satisfied worms. The middle section here, all we have left is the skins, really. That was just the end of one of the slices. So again, there's really no evidence of the actual tomatoes other than the skins, and masses of worms, nice and thick. So we move along to the complete tomatoes that still look mostly complete, but we'll have a look under here. Lots of worms, and really they kind of just, oh yeah, look at them under there, they are balling up under the tomatoes, but the worms are not really getting into them, they're just waiting for the tomatoes to gradually break down with the bacteria, and then they're sort of hanging around and nibbling it as they decay. Lots of babies under there too. So whilst these tomatoes will certainly be consumed, it's going to take a lot longer to get through those, considering our sliced ones are pretty well all gone except some skins, and our mulched ones, I can't see any evidence of them at all. So that's really good information for feeding your household waste food scraps to your worms. If you go to the trouble of cutting them up, or as I do, mulch them, because I find that's easier, you just pour them through the mulcher. It makes a nice slurry, and the bacteria can then get in. People also freeze their food scraps, which bursts the cell structure and they break down a lot quicker. But without a doubt, really good experiment here to show that it's worth going to a little bit of trouble to reduce the food portion size, and it just helps the whole breakdown system work better, which in turn benefits the worms. Alrighty, thanks for watching that. Look out for my next worm test.